I want to start off with a question. How do you know that your article is reaching its potential? Is it because it's free of errors? Because you paid someone with SEO or sales experience? At the end of the day, it may just be a simple gut check. And one of our last processes is to trust your gut, but it's so much better to make sure that you have some data driven points when you're deciding if you have a good article. This is extremely important if you're buying an article from someone else because you want to make sure prices ranges vary, especially if you're on a network like Fiverr. You could be getting a high quality article for $35 or you could be getting one for $75, and it's really important that you perform a content analysis. In this video, I'm going to show you a 7-step process on how you can analyze your article, whether you write it yourself or if you buy it from someone. This will help you know that you have a good article even before you post it. So without further ado, let's begin. Now, to save some time in this video, I have already done several of the steps, so you can go in and you can do this. You can pause the video or you can rewatch it as you're going through. You can also go to the description below and follow along in the blog post. So the first step is having a strong headline. So I've already written my article, and a lot of people, what's really common is they'll come in here and they'll put in an article and they'll try and get as many keywords or they'll make it lengthy as possible. As you can see, I actually only have an overall headline score of 48. Now, there are several tools out there. This is the one that we'd recommend. It's really nice because you can get a readability score, an SEO score, and a sentiment score. Instead of playing around and trying to get a great number for you, I'm just going to show you the one that we did, and it is actually here. It looks like I didn't have it preloaded. So we'll just paste this in here so you can see the before and after. Again, it's very simple. You could add a little bit more, but according to this headline, you know it's going to be a good score. Right, now you should make sure that you have done keyword research and your keywords in here. I don't want to go, this video isn't about keyword research, although it's very important. If you don't have the correct keywords, you could write a good article, but it's only going to be as good and get you traffic for whatever keywords you chose. So the next step that you're going to go through is you're going to make sure your article is actionable. A lot of people, especially when they're writing for search engine optimization, they miss the call to action. So you just want to go through, and here, for example, I've made sure I've made it clear that I have some call to actions here. It says, hey, we hope as a final advice, you can repurpose your content strategy. We gave a free bonus. Feel free to analyze your content yourself or have us do it for you. Even up here, I said, don't hesitate to contact us. Now, to go a step further, I want to make sure this links to some type of content so they know that next step, how to contact us to do the content on it for them, or to write the article, or to do the remarketing. Okay, but you want to make sure it's actionable. Now, if you're doing a sales piece of content, you probably have that very clear. But a lot of people, when they're writing for search engine optimization, forget what that next step is. And maybe that next step is just simple as subscribe or learn more or check out this other article, but you just want to make sure that next actionable step is very clear to the reader. That's often forgotten in a lot of articles. A lot of people just write for information, which is still great, but you want to make sure it's going towards a purpose. So after you have a good headline and you know your content is actionable, you'll want to go through and do a grammar check. I recommend Grammarly. Now, I've already gone through and you can see I've already got a very good score on here. Now, there are some things that may not work. You will need to use a little bit of your brain just to make sure that it makes sense, because sometimes if you just follow all of the edits and you just put it in, you might get something that sounds a little bit robotic or it doesn't make sense. So you will want to give it a quick run through. From here on out, on all the other 4 steps, I always recommend going back and doing a quick revision, or you can make all your edits and go back and do the Grammarly review. So the next thing that we want to look at is SEO. Now, search engine optimization, this could be a whole list of several articles, but when it comes to article writing, I want to show you a few things. So one of our biggest tips is word count. You want to generally have 10 to 20% more words than competing sites on that first page. You also want to make sure that you have a keyword density of 2. So to do that, you can check right here. It'll tell you how many words. You can also use this wordcounter.net, plug in a competitor, see how many words to give you a ballpark. Generally, if you're ordering an article, you're going to know what that word target should be before you order it. But one of the things I want to note here is you have this keyword density, and as we're looking for content analysis at 2%. You generally want to shoot for 2 to 3%, which is good. But another thing that'll help you is a lot of writers tend to add, just like we're speaking, we have what we call fluff words, and you can see make sure is probably a phrase that's in here. If it's in here 2% of the time, it probably doesn't need to be. So I would probably go back and try and find wherever there's a make sure and try and reword it a little bit just to take out any extra fluff. If I can, that is just an extra step to even make it even a little bit better. Again, you can go down a rabbit hole and you can spend hours on this, or you can do it very brief. The big thing that you'd want to check here is that you have the right amount of word count and that your keyword density is not too high or too low for your keywords. You can also look up a bunch of other articles. After you go in, the nice part about a lot of people will focus their article with their keywords at the start, which is still great when you're writing. To make sure that you're solving or addressing a problem, I always like to start with the topic and the phrase, make sure it's in the title, and 1 or 2 times in, but then I'd like to go back and add long-term phrases as well as another recommendation. But what you can see here, here's just kind of the word count editor before and after. Now again, you can see I'm still at that 2%. I didn't go over. I added content analysis one more time, but I'm still at that 2% mark, so it's safe. Now I did make several edits because the next step is the readability. A lot of search engine optimization articles are all about trying to win the algorithm. However, you're writing for a customer and a person who's looking for either something they want to solve a problem. So you want to make sure that it's very readable. Generally, the more people that can read it, the better it's going to click with. And you just want a common audience. Unless you're writing something very industry specific, you might want something a little higher. Again, now there is a readability score in Grammarly that can help you with this. I recommend using the Hemingway editor. This is a great app. It'll come through here. As you can see, it tells you and it kind of gives you a guide. 14 of 84 sentences are hard to read. 10 of 84 sentences. Now, you're probably never going to get a perfect, and it's not all going to be easy, but, grade 7 is a really good article, especially for some of the industry. Now, if you're selling something for a younger demographic, you might want to try and make it a little bit easier. But what you can do is you can go through it's colored, and then you can make the edits, and then you can always go back and check the grammar and make sure it still flows really well. But you can see here in the Hemingway editor, we started out with 10 of 84 sentences are really hard to read, and we went down to 7, and then we went from 14 to 13, and then we went 8 and 8, and then we had 2 phrases that have a simpler alternatives down to 0. So overall, this is a lot better, and we can even see that it went from a grade 7 to a grade 6, which is really good. Now, I've already copied and pasted this. This is the version that's in the word counter, because again, when we do that, sometimes we make changes. We want to make sure that we didn't take any of our keywords out, or we didn't add any extra fluff that needed to be in there. Right. So now this article looks pretty good. One of the last and final checks that you want to do is a plagiarism check. I like using, there's a lot of different tools out there. Grammarly is just a great tool because it can do a lot of different things, but it does have a plagiarism checker. Now, one thing to note, anything under 6% is still considered pretty unique, but I just want to go through and show you that some of these articles really aren't even related. This can boost the effectiveness of your Facebook ads. We're not talking about Facebook ads. However, what I could do is, you can see it's a small phrase. We can make a little quick edit. So how it benefits and what the reader should do next. So if you have a specific offer, it should be very clear what the offer is, how it benefits them, and what the reader should do next. And as you can see, we've taken that to a 2%. You can try and go through and eliminate it. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go through. Now, what you're going to see, there are several people. Generally, when I send an article to a client, I'm going to go through and I'm going to send screenshots of all of these scores. It's pretty common for other writers to do that as well, because you can actually do this stats right here. If you go to the performance, we can get a detailed report and analyze it more. What a lot of writers will do is they'll actually just come here and they'll just hit the trash can. I'm not going to hit the trash can because I want to go back and fix these. But then it'll show there's no plagiarism or that, and they'll send it to the client, which isn't always true. So you do just want to be wary of that. I always recommend, even if someone's sending you a Grammarly report, just throw it in there, just so you know exactly what it is. Now, the last and final check is just the gut check. Generally, after doing all these scores, this is great, but just like optimizing any article, it could lose your tone of voice or make it sound a little bit robotic. So I do recommend giving it a final read through. If you are writing it yourself, it's really good to let it sit a day if you have that time and that's a luxury. or you can give it to someone that may not know your subject as well. And if they can clearly identify and they can read through and understand your article, for example, my wife knows nothing about marketing, so giving her an article about marketing like this, and if she can read it and understand it, I know it's probably a fairly good article. But you just want to do a gut check, one last gut check, because it is important to go with your gut. I think there's an importance to that. But I do think there is also, having these scores validate so you can feel more confident about that is really good as well. So this is how I would recommend performing a content analysis. So I'm going to just, in summary, the first step is to make sure you have a strong headline. The next is to make sure that you're writing something and the clear next action is clear for the reader. You do a grammar check. You make sure it's optimized for search engine optimization. You check and do a readability score. And then you make sure you do a plagiarism check for unique content so you don't get hit for duplicate content. And lastly, you just do that final gut check. Now, if you have a great article, you can feel great about publishing this. One thing you don't want to do is limit the potential of your writing. Having a great article doesn't mean it's always going to do well. So you want to make sure, a lot of it will depend on the keywords that you've done, but also how it's marketed. If you have a really great article, make sure you repurpose it into a video like this video we're doing. You can see this blog post is actually going over the same steps that I'm going over now, and we can even help you repurpose that. But if you have any questions, I hope this video helps you feel confident about the content you're writing and publishing. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments or reach out to us. Now, whether you don't have the time or you just don't feel like you're an expert to do this, we'd be happy to do some of this for you. There's a description. There's a link to our Fiverr gig in the bottom of this video, as well as a list of the resources and sites and tools that we mentioned. So please check the description and make sure that if you found this video helpful that you give it a like. Thank you.